Hello, everyone. Welcome to Eye on Africa. Here are your headlines on this Friday. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization warns the current invasion of desert locusts in eastern Africa could prove catastrophic for crops and food security in the region. Hundreds of billions of locusts have been wreaking havoc in several countries since November. As the Democratic Republic of Congo marks the one-year anniversary since the inauguration of Felix Tshisekedi, our correspondent in Kinshasa looks at the tensions that continue to hamper his presidency. And we head to Egypt to report on the dire humanitarian situation facing political activists in jail. Our correspondents in Cairo met with the family of one man who has been behind bars for 5 years. But first, experts at the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization say the current invasion of desert locusts in eastern Africa is the worst in Ethiopia and Somalia in 25 years and the worst in Kenya in 70 years. The FAO estimates one of the swarms currently over Kenya covers an area of about 2,400 square kilometers and may contain as many as 200 billion locusts. The Desert Locust Control Organization for Eastern Africa says Kenya has 5 aircraft spraying pesticides on the swarms. Earlier we spoke to Cyril Ferrand, who is the East Africa Resilience Team leader at the FAO. He began by explaining what was causing this exceptional upsurge in locusts this winter.
Desert locust is known in the Arabic Peninsula and part of northern Africa. The exceptional climatic conditions have been really at the source of the current situation. We had extremely wet conditions and then a number of typhoons that came in December and then created extremely favorable conditions for desert locusts to come towards Ethiopia, Somalia, and then Kenya now. As a matter of fact, we are still having rains in Kenya, which is very unusual for this time of the year, and all of this create these very favorable conditions.
Mr. Ferrand, the situation has been going on for several weeks. We've mentioned it already several times here on Eye on Africa, even since November in some parts of the continent. Several countries have announced measures, including spraying chemicals, but it appears it's getting worse with this new report and these new figures released by the FAO. Why is that?
Well, again, as I said, I mean, the reality is that this favorable condition have brought a massive amount of locusts towards the region. At this time of the year, normally the locusts should have returned back to much drier and cooler areas such as the Arabic Peninsula, and then they arrived. I mean, in a moment where we had extremely favorable rains and extended period for farming and cropping. And of course, they were able to find a lot of food in the entire region, starting with grazing areas of pastoral communities in particular, and then cropping areas now. Yeah.
There are many shocking statistics when it comes to desert locusts, but one of them is the fact that desert locusts can eat their own weight in food every single day. Do we have an idea of how much crop and vegetation is currently being lost in Eastern Africa and whether it could pose a threat to food security in the coming weeks and months?
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. That's a question we are frequently asked at the moment. When locusts arrived in southern Somalia and entered into northern Kenya around 28th of December for Kenya, they found a situation where basically crops were reaching already a very advanced and mature stage. This means concretely that they are normally eating on the leaves and not on the cobs of maize, for example. So the damage on crop is estimated for now for the harvest that was just finished in December. The impact on the crop harvest is limited. That's our current estimate, but we are conducting a number of rapid assessments in order to gauge really the extent to which the crop have been affected. What we do know is that on grazing area, it's a bit more severe. We are not able to quantify for now. We have teams deployed in all over the region together with the government, because the government, of course, frontliner in addressing the issue of desert locusts. So we are working side by side with them in order to understand what is the magnitude. Our biggest fear is obviously for the next season. The next season in this region will be in April with the next round of rains. And that will be coinciding with a time where the new generation of locusts will be in the region and will obviously find a lot to eat when farmers will start to plant. So the damage on the past crop is not that big for the moment, but we are really fearing for the season ahead of us.
A Sudanese rebel group has signed a preliminary agreement with the government after weeks of talks. The move is seen as a key step toward finalizing a peace deal between the parties. Talks began in October and aim to end bloody conflicts in several regions, including Darfur. The latest deal covers issues like land, power sharing, and the creation of a unified army. An agreement has yet to be signed with other groups that are currently fighting for power across Sudan. It has been 1 year since Felix Tshisekedi became the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but it hasn't been easy. It took 9 months for the president and former leader Joseph Kabila to form a government, with tensions continuing to this day. France 24's Clément Bonneau has more from Kinshasa.
When Felix Tshisekedi was sworn in a year ago, he barely had any political experience. He's since grown into an ambitious president, his promises of radical change earning him praise both at home and abroad. But of course, things haven't been easy for the new president. He's had to share power with his predecessor, Joseph Kabila, who remained a powerful figure in the background. The two men took 9 months to form a coalition, and there have been a lot of tensions to this day. On Sunday, President Tshisekedi threatened to dissolve parliament, accusing some of his partners of, I quote, getting in his way. What exactly did he mean? We asked his chief of staff, Vital Kamerhe.
Before the current government was sworn in, the president was able to work with members of Kabila's party, and they achieved great things together. But now, despite the president's efforts, reforms have ground to a halt. We're stuck, and the president wants to know why. There are people who are nostalgic for power. They're used to doing whatever they want, but this must not stop us.
Tshisekedi's threat was quickly rejected by Jeanine Mabunda, the leader of the National Assembly and a close ally of Joseph Kabila. In a speech on Tuesday, she said that anyone who violates the constitution could face, I quote, prosecution for high treason. So there have been tensions, but for now the two sides seem keen to continue to work together. They know that a political crisis could have an uncertain outcome and could plunge the country into chaos.
Well, one of Tshisekedi's main challenges is to continue the healing process following the two bloody wars that ripped the country apart in 1996 and 2003. Millions were killed when Lendu farmers and Hema herders clashed this weekend. France 24 will be airing a documentary on the devastating fallout of the conflict. Our reporters Nicolas Germain and Thomas Nicolon spoke to some of those still tormented by what they saw. Here's a short clip from that report.
The next day, Dismas takes us to the other side of the river, to the district of Lubunga, which was also badly hit during the war. We are going to meet Félicien Chilumba, who lost his first wife in 1997, killed by an artillery shell fired by Laurent Désiré Kabila's rebels. At the time, they had a 2.5-month-old baby.
Oui, bonjour. Oui, ça va un peu.
Can you tell us what happened here during the First Congo War?
Every time I tell the story, it's really painful. When the shell fell on our neighbor's house, we were outside, and the shrapnel got into her eye, and she died immediately. She didn't have time to say anything.
That full documentary will air this Saturday at 9:15 p.m. Paris time. That's 8:15 p.m. GMT. Or you can head to our website and watch it right now. Go to france24.com/en, click on TV shows, and then on reporters. In Egypt, at least 5 political prisoners have died in prison since the beginning of December due to ill treatment, according to human rights groups. 900 have died since 2013. Ala Abdel Fattah, a figurehead of the 2011 revolution, is entering his 6th year behind bars, accused by the government of having links with a terrorist organization. Eric de la Varenne, Claire Willio, and Frank Hersey have this report.
Ala Abdel Fattah is one of the icons of the 2011 Arab Spring. He comes from a family of human rights campaigners. On this day in Cairo, he was commemorating his father. Ala believes that the fight must continue, whatever the cost.
The fear is there, but also the defiance is there. It's always important to continue to defend rights.
Ala made this speech last September, in what was his last public appearance. 3 weeks later, the authorities took him back into prison. For his family, everything they've seen of him over the past few years can be reduced to just a few photos, because since the end of 2013, Ala has spent more than 5 years behind bars. And he's not the only one. Thousands of Egyptians have been arrested again since September, following demonstrations demanding the ousting of President Sisi, who's led the country with an iron fist since the overthrow of the government formed by the revolution. Now, repression is reaching all walks of life.
They are targeting political figures, they are targeting academics, they are targeting writers, they are targeting journalists and lawyers beyond any scope we've ever seen before. But they're also targeting people in the street. And I think this is the main intimidating tactic they are using right now.
Ala receives just one hot meal per week, which his sister Mona and his mother make for him. Their lives revolve around their visits to the prison and their fight to keep him alive.
The prisons are no longer a place for rehabilitation. They are more of concentration camps where the prisoners are subjected to extremely harsh and criminal conditions and abuses.
Mona and her mother hope that Allah will hold out until the day they manage to secure his release. According to human rights associations, more than 60,000 people have been arrested since the current regime came into power in 2013. The government accuses the majority of those arrested of belonging to a terrorist organization.
That does it for this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching. The news continues on France 24 right after this.